Here we want to take a look at solving inequalities. We're looking again at inequalities in just one variable. The thing we have to remember is that it's pretty much the same as solving an equation. We're going to do all of the same things, simplifying both sides, getting all the x terms to one side, the number terms to the other side, and then dividing to isolate, or usually dividing to isolate our variable. The one big difference, and maybe you remember this, is that when you multiply or divide, and usually it's dividing, by a negative number, we are going to reverse or flip the symbol. Okay, so if it was greater than, it'll flip around and be less than. And it's the same with or equal to or not or equal to's. So let's take a look at a couple examples. The first one's very simple. I have a negative 3x is greater than 9. Normal solving would be divide by the number that's in front of my x so that I get just my x. Well, in this case, because I'm dividing by a negative, I'm looking at the process. How am I getting to the next step? I'm dividing by a negative. That means that when I write down my answer here, x on the left, it's now going to be less than whatever I get on the other side, in this case, a negative 3. Okay, so I flipped the symbol. So if I want to graph this, I would find my negative 3, and I'm going to use my bracket parenthesis notation here. I want x to be strictly less than the negative 3, so I'd be shading to the left, and I would use a parenthesis there to indicate that it gets to the negative 3 but doesn't include it. Now you can always check your work here by saying, okay, 0 is something over on the right side. It's not part of my solution, right? It shouldn't work. So if I put 0 into the original inequality, negative 3 times 0 is 0. 0 is greater than 9 is false. So 0 shouldn't be part of the solution. So I think I've shaded the right side. Let's take a look at another one that involves a little bit more algebra. So on this next one, I've got x's and numbers on both sides. My general rule is let's get x's to one side, numbers to the other by adding or subtracting. So in this case, I've got 8x on the left. I'm going to go ahead and subtract the 5x on the right so that I keep my x term positive. Okay, then if I'm doing that, bringing all the x's to the left side, I want to go ahead and move this 8. So I'm going to, instead of subtract, I'm going to do the opposite and add it to both sides. All right, so what does that give me? 8 minus 5 leaves me with a 3x on the left. Bring down my inequality just as it was. We didn't multiply or divide by anything negative, no flipping or reversing of symbols. On the right-hand side, the x terms canceled, and we have a 9. Then I would say, okay, so to get x by itself, I would have to divide. In this case, we're dividing by a positive 3. If I divide by a positive 3, there's nothing to reverse or flip. So my answer here would be simply x is greater than or equal to positive 3. All right, so what does my number line look like? Here's my 3. X is greater than, so it's going to go to the right side. And I want to say it could include it, so using the bracket there on the 3 would indicate that that's part of the solution. Got a couple more. Okay, so pause it a second and see if you can answer these two, and then we'll talk about them. All right, so let's see how we did this one. I've got my x already on the left side, so I'm just going to get rid of the 4 by subtracting it. Now I'm subtracting, not dividing by negative, so no flipping of anything. I'm just going to come down here and get 5x less than or equal to, now negative 6 minus 4 more puts me in the hole at negative 10. And then we would divide to get our x by itself. All right, now I'm not dividing by a negative, right? So I'm not flipping anything. It's still going to be x is less than or equal to, and my answer here is going to be a negative 2. Big point. It has nothing to do with what kind of answer I get, whether or not I flip the symbol. The only time I ever flip that inequality symbol is when I'm actually dividing by that negative number. So in this case, I didn't do that, and I didn't flip any symbols. Here's my negative 2. You should have shaded to the left and put a bracket on the negative 2. What about the next one? All right, well, again, my x is kind of by itself, so we might want to subtract the 7 from both sides. That would leave me with negative 4x, don't lose your signs, greater than negative 4. All right, so to get the x by itself this time, I do have to divide by a negative answer. So in dividing by a negative answer, I know when I come down to my next step, I have to reverse that inequality and make it x is less than. And let's see, negative divided by a negative is going to be a positive 1. So my number line graph here would be find 1. I want to go less than, and I do not want to include, so I'm going to use the parenthesis there on the 1. Let me know if you have any questions.